Have you ever dedicated 15 years of your life to a company, only to be told you're no longer a fit for where they're headed? That's what happened to Daniel Caldwell, a quiet but powerful force behind one of the most trusted client portfolios in Dallas. One Tuesday morning, a younger director with a polished MBA smile sat him down and said, "We're looking for younger, cheaper talent." But what they didn't expect was that the man they dismissed as outdated would walk out with nothing but a cardboard box and end up building something bigger than they ever imagined. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about legacy, about trust, and about what happens when experience meets integrity and refuses to disappear quietly. We're moving toward younger, more agile talent. People who bring fresh energy at half the cost. That's how Chase Morgan opened the conversation. No small talk, no buffer. Just a glass desk between us and a salary figure he didn't want to see on next quarter's spreadsheet. "My name is Daniel Caldwell, 50 years old this year." Or, in Chase's words, out of alignment with our growth vision. "For 15 years, I've been Senior Client Relations Executive at Stratwell & Company, headquartered in Dallas, Texas. I came in when the firm still operated out of a two-room space above a shuttered bookstore. Back then, we were scrappy, held together by handshakes, late nights, and a belief that relationships came before revenue. Now, all that apparently stood between Chase and his next promotion was getting me and my paycheck off the books. It took 8 minutes for a decade and a half of loyalty to be dismissed. I didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded and shook his hand with the same professionalism I'd used to hold together our top-tier clients during 3 recessions and a global pandemic. He seemed surprised by how calm I was. What he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that while he was trimming budgets, I'd already started remembering birthdays, kids' names, dinner reservations. Not from a CRM, from memory, because the clients didn't call Stratwell. They called me. I left his office with my dignity intact and a cardboard box in my arms. The kind they always give you when you become a number instead of name. Inside were 15 years of client notes, handwritten thank you cards, a photo of my daughter Jessica from her high school graduation, and a desk clock I never once looked at while working. Mary Ann from finance appeared in the doorway as I was packing the last of it. She'd been with the company nearly as long as I had. "You okay?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah, I am. They don't have a clue what they're doing," she whispered. "Chase thinks business is just data, that he can optimize loyalty out of a spreadsheet." I didn't answer. What would be the point? Chase wasn't the problem. He was just the symptom of a bigger disease, a culture that had forgotten where its value came from. Not in numbers, but in names. I got home early that day. First time in years. Sat on the edge of my worn leather couch and called Jessica, now 23 and working in marketing in Austin. "They let you go?" she asked, her voice rising. "After everything you've done for them?" "It's business," I said. "No," she replied. "It's ignorance." She wasn't wrong, but I wasn't angry. I was already thinking 3 steps ahead. Truth was, I'd been preparing for this. Ever since Frank Delaney, the man who built Stratwell from nothing, sold the firm to an equity group and retired to Montana, I knew change was coming. It had started with buzzwords and board meetings, efficiency, automation, talent refresh, all wrapped in sterile optimism. 3 weeks ago, I overheard Chase in a conversation outside a conference room. "These legacy salaries are unsustainable," he was saying, "especially in client-facing roles. We need newer blood." Legacy. That was me now. I returned to my office and pulled up a file, not Stratwell CRM, but my own personal log. 15 years of notes, anniversaries, deal terms, wine preferences, the name of a client's Labrador who died in 2018. Things no algorithm could capture. Then I made a call to Ethan Rowe, an old colleague who had left Stratwell 5 years prior to help launch a boutique firm called Kensington & Rowe. We'd stayed in touch. Quarterly lunches, occasional golf. "How's business?" I asked. "Booming," he said. "In fact, we're talking about expanding the client strategy division." "That's good to know," I said quietly. By the time Chase handed me that tidy pink slip, I already had an offer sitting in my inbox. 3 days later, I sat in my car outside Stonebridge Country Club at 1:58 p.m., watching Chase walk up to James Sinclair, CEO of Monarch Industrial, my biggest client for over a decade. They shook hands. Chase beamed. James nodded politely. That's when it hit me. Chase thought he could replace me, like you swap out software. But trust doesn't transfer. Connection isn't downloadable. He had my title, my desk, my salary slot, but he didn't have what mattered. That afternoon, I drove to Kensington and Rowe's office downtown and met with Ethan. I handed him a counteroffer. I want full autonomy over client onboarding, I said. My own team structure. And most importantly, no enforcement of any non-compete against clients who come of their own will. He raised an eyebrow. You're essentially proposing to bring your book of business. I'm not taking anything, I said. I'm continuing what I built. The trust is mine. The contracts just happened to be signed under Stratwell's logo. He called in Maggie Kensington, co-founder of the firm. She listened, then nodded slowly. Make it happen, she said. That night, I opened a yellow legal pad and wrote down 10 names, not of companies, but of people. I didn't start with sales reps or CEOs. I started with executive assistants, the real gatekeepers. By midnight, I'd sent out 10 emails. No pitch, no pressure, just a note. Just want to share I've taken a new role at Kensington and Rowe. If it makes sense to reconnect, I'd welcome a chance to update you. 7 replies came back by morning. They've been waiting to hear from you. The first call I made was to James. Daniel, he said, answering on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd reach out. How was your golf meeting? I asked. He chuckled. 4 hours of buzzwords. Synergy this, strategic value that. Not once did he ask about my son's wedding. That's why I'm calling, I said. I'm not here to sell, just to let you know where I've landed. He paused. Then, send the paperwork. We're following you. Within a week, 6 more clients had called me. I didn't need to sell them on anything. They just needed to know where I'd gone. And that was enough. No flashy emails. No pitch decks. Just old trust reawakened. Then on Monday morning, Maggie Kensington stepped into my office with a slight frown and a handful of printed pages. We've got a situation, she said, laying down an email. Or maybe a gift wrapped in legal threat. Subject line. Cease and desist. Immediate action required. Sender, Chase Morgan. I scanned it slowly. Legal language drenched in corporate panic. Client interference. Breach of confidentiality. Return of proprietary data. It ended with an offer. We are open to discussing settlement terms before this escalates further. I chuckled. Chase was cracking. He wasn't losing clients. He was losing trust. And that terrified him. I never accessed Stratwell CRM, I told Maggie. Never needed to. Everything that mattered, names, contacts, relationships, was in here, I said, tapping my temple. And in here, I added, placing a hand over my chest. She nodded. Legal will handle the rest. That afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID, Marianne. Stratwell's a meltdown, she whispered. Emergency board meetings. Chase is getting grilled hard. They just realized 7 of our top clients have pulled out, and your name keeps coming up. What's he saying? He told the board you hacked the CRM, said you stole data. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. You and I both know I never logged into that system, I said. I do, she replied. That's why I'm calling. Be careful, Daniel. Chase is scared, and scared people make stupid decisions. The next morning, I arrived at my desk to find a new message on my phone. We should talk. 9 a.m. Hudson Cafe. This doesn't need to get uglier. Chase. Maggie advised against going. He's spiraling. Could be trying to bait you. I shook my head. No, I want to hear him out. I want him to understand exactly why he's losing. Understand. I got there 15 minutes early and picked a back table with a clear view of the front entrance. Chase walked in at 9:05. Shirt crisp, tie tight, but his shoulders told a different story. His eyes scanned the room like he was looking for a lifeline. Thanks for coming, he said, sliding into the booth. I said nothing, just waited. Look, he began, leaning in. We both know there's damage here, but we can fix it. Whatever Kensington's paying you, Stratwell can match. Add a signing bonus. Equity. Let's not turn this into a war. I took a slow sip of coffee, eyes steady. You still don't get it, I said softly. This was never about money. He raised an eyebrow. Everything is about money. That's exactly why you're losing. I leaned forward slightly. These clients, they didn't follow me because I gave them a better rate. They followed me because I answered the phone on Sundays. Because I remembered their kids' names. Because when they lost someone they loved, I showed up in person. No pitch. No contract. Just presence. He clenched his jaw. Touching. But in the real world, that sentiment is costing us millions. So, name your price. I shook my head. I don't have a price. I have principles. That afternoon, just as I was finishing a call with a new client lead, Ethan Rowe knocked on my office door with a puzzled look on his face. You just had a call from Frank Delaney, he said slowly. Your old boss. Former owner of Stratwell. I nodded. What did he say? Said you'd have his number. Also said, and I quote, the board wants to talk to you yesterday. I didn't even blink. Thanks, Ethan. When I dialed Frank's number, the one I hadn't used in 5 years, he answered on the second ring. They're in full panic, he said without preamble. When they saw which clients had left, they called me, asking what the hell happened. I leaned back in my chair. And what did you tell them? I told them the truth, Frank said. That for 15 years, the only reason Stratwell had a stable client base was because of you. That you weren't just worth your salary. You were worth every dime they didn't spend chasing new business. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. They're asking, he continued, if you'd consider coming back. They want to offer you Chase's job. The temptation hit for a moment, but only for a moment. I thought about Chase's smug tone during our final meeting. The way he never once looked me in the eye. The way 15 years had been reduced to a line item on a spreadsheet. I'm not interested in his job, I said, but I am interested in something else. What's that? A partnership. I laid it out clean. Kensington and Rowe and Stratwell and Company. 2 firms, 1 client experience. Shared service delivery. Clients could choose their lead firm, but have access to both teams. Revenue shared based on service hours, not corporate ego. And most importantly, no one loses their job because one man got too obsessed with disruption. Frank was quiet for a long moment. You want the board to partner with a firm that's gutting their client list? No, I corrected him. I want them to stop the bleeding and stabilize both firms before it's too late. The clients win. The employees win. Nobody has to fall just to prove who's right. Frank finally exhaled. You always were better at chess than anyone gave you credit for. I'll bring it to the board first thing tomorrow. That evening, I called Maggie Kensington to my office. She listened carefully as I laid out the partnership proposal. When I finished, she arched an eyebrow. This is generous, she said. We could just wait a few more weeks and absorb the rest of their clients when they collapse. We could, I agreed. But a lot of good people would get hurt in the process. Staff who've done nothing wrong except trust the wrong leader. She studied me for a long moment. Then finally, she nodded. You're not doing this for revenge. Revenge is wasteful, I said. I'm interested in building something better. The next morning at 9:45 a.m., my phone rang. It was Frank. They're in, he said. Pending legal review. The board voted unanimously to move forward with the partnership. And they've asked Chase to tender his resignation, effective immediately. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. And the employees? No further layoffs. The board admits they followed Chase too blindly. They forgot what actually made the business work. Thanks, Frank. It's not thanks, he said. It's respect. And overdue. 6 weeks later, I stood behind the podium in Kensington and Rowe's main conference room, facing a room full of familiar faces, clients, board members, team leaders from both firms. The partnership announcement was being made official. It wasn't a merger. It wasn't an acquisition. It was something better. A shared vision built not on numbers, but on names. Not on disruption, but on connection. From the back of the room, I spotted Frank Delaney, arms folded, smiling proudly. Beside him stood Marianne, along with several former Stratwell employees who once feared their jobs were next. Now, they were part of something bigger. The agreement was simple in structure, but bold in impact. Clients could choose which firm to list as their provider, but gain access to both service teams. Revenue would be split based on delivery, not politics. And most importantly, all client relations, every handshake, every promise, would be managed under one unified team. My team. After the announcement, James Sinclair from Monarch Industrial approached me, shaking his head with a grin. When you left Stratwell, he said, I told my team we were following you. But this is even better. You turned getting fired into the best thing that could have happened for all of us. A few minutes later, Catherine Ellsworth from Westridge Partners joined us. That young man never understood what he was throwing away, she said quietly. But we did. As the crowd began to filter out, I found myself by the tall windows overlooking downtown Dallas. Maggie joined me there, coffee in hand. The board's calling this a masterstroke, she said. In 6 weeks, you transformed 2 companies and secured a client base that'll last years. I shook my head. I didn't transform anything. I just reminded people of what they already knew. Business isn't built on cost-cutting. It's built on relationships. She studied me. And revenge, she asked with a subtle smile. Was any of this about that? I looked out over the city. No, the best revenge wasn't taking the clients. It was showing everyone the right way to keep them. A month after the partnership announcement, I left the office early for dinner with Jessica. We grabbed a booth at a quiet restaurant she'd picked out. So let me get this straight, she said between bites of grilled salmon. The guy who fired you is gone. You basically run 2 firms now, and everyone's calling you a genius. I laughed. I'm just a guy who answers his phone on weekends. She smiled. You always were more than that. After dinner, I drove home to a quiet house, the kind of silence that didn't feel empty, just earned. I walked into my office, flicked on the lamp, and noticed a small package sitting on my desk. No return address. Inside was a framed photo. It was the original Stratwell team, back when it was still just 4 of us above that dusty old bookstore, me, Frank, and 2 others smiling in front of a peeling sign. Taped to the back was a note. People sign contracts with people. Never forget that. Frank. I placed the frame beside the door where every client would see it on their way in and out. That afternoon, I had 3 back-to-back meetings. No damage control. No firefighting. Just the work I loved, listening, solving, showing up. As I picked up the phone to make the next call, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. Not relief. Not triumph. Satisfaction. Not because I won a corporate battle, but because I proved that doing business the human way still mattered, and always would. In the end, Chase did me a favor. By trying to replace me with someone younger and cheaper, he showed everyone just how valuable I really was. And that was a lesson worth every single minute of the journey. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been pushed aside, underestimated, or told you were too experienced to matter, then you're not alone. You don't have to fight for revenge. Just stand in your value and let the results speak louder than your resume. Drop a comment below. What part of Daniel's story reminded you of your own journey? Or tell us, what's the one relationship you've built in your career that no algorithm could ever replace? If this story reminded you that trust still matters, hit the like button. Subscribe for more real stories about resilience, quiet leadership, and the power of doing business the human way. Because sometimes the best way to win is simply to not play their game and build your own instead.